Okay, hi there. This is Fraley's World Insight Vlogs once again, and this is Monday, uh, 3/14/19, and got kind of a lot to talk about in no certain order tonight. I'm not going to do a fancy monologue, and I'm just going to talk about a little bit of everything. I have some main things I wanted to talk about, but I wanted to target it mainly is to talk about fake news and fact checking, something a lot of people don't realize is really important, but I'll get more into that in a minute. Uh, First off, there's been a lot going on lately, and there's really not enough time to talk about everything, but I thought I would talk about a few things before I got into the heart or meat of the order, if you know what I'm saying. And you'll have to excuse the lighting in here, it's not the greatest. Needed a better light bulb, but I'm only allowed to put so much wattage in this room. They're going more and more to that all the time, low wattage light bulbs. So this is what I get. Yeah, you and your agendas. Anyway, let's see. It's been a lot going on this last week and the start of this week. I saw Trump's CPAC speech the other night. I actually watched it at night. I didn't get to watch it during the day. And he made a lot of colorful jokes about different individuals. And he outlined some of the major events and the things that he's done for the economy. And he even spoke, let me see, what's one of the points that sticks out in my head? Oh, yeah. There's been a lot going on lately about freedom of expression, especially in major colleges all around, because they're filled with liberals, and of course they want to teach their liberal doctrine, but they want to kind of censor everybody else, and that's happening more and more. The liberals are censoring conservatives and won't allow conservatives to speak their point of view. They're trying to hush them down. They won't even allow some conservative speakers on campus, or they actually ask them to leave. But anyway, it's a lot been going on lately. You had the Covington kids, and I covered that. I've come to find out they're actually suing the Washington Post for fake news. Washington Post, which used to be a pretty reputable source, because I read it. I read it in college, as a matter of fact. It was required in one of my classes, and I kept all my old ones. I always like reading it. But anyway, they're getting sued for $250 million because they only presented one side of a story. They didn't present the Covington kids' actual true side of the story. And a lot of the media, especially on TV, people like CNN, MSNBC, and others, only gave one side of it, and they showed one film clip of the Indian beating a drum in the MAGA kid's face, when in fact the Indian guy actually walked up to him and started beating in his face. The kid didn't do anything. He was just standing there of his own free will. He just stood there and smiled and let the Indian do what he was going to do. We'll come to find out that Indian had kind of or Indian or Native American, whichever way you want to put it. He had a kind of a bad background himself, so his credibility went out the window when they discovered that there was another actual film made, and it showed the Indian actually walking up to him and getting in his space, not allowing him his freedom of right to actually be where he was at. And there's nothing wrong with wearing a hat. I mean, some people might even not like this hat. It's a AT hat, Arkansas Tech hat. Of course, I like it. course, if you're on a different team, I mean, in football or sport or basketball or something, you might not like ATU, but there's nothing to be offended about this hat. It just represents one school. Well, it's the same way with MAGA hats. They just represent one party, and especially Donald Trump. And if you get offended by that, then the majority of these people in the United States are going to offend you just because we support this guy, because he's doing something about things, getting stuff done, instead of talking like the liberals and not offering any solutions. Instead, they want to kick the can down the road, talk about doing stuff, but not actually doing stuff. And when they do come up with something, it's nutso like this. Some of these new House representatives they got in there, if you know what I mean, this Cortez lady and a bunch of others. Anyway, let's get on to what I was talking about. Plus, not only the Covington kids, but there was another incident where a MAGA supporter he didn't actually go to the college, but he was on campus promoting his conservative views and values, and a guy come up, and the guy that came up to him actually wasn't a college student either, but he come up bullying him around, hitting him, and this guy's getting sued for a big sum of money too. And this kid that got hit, the MAGA conservative, he's gonna get a lot of money off this guy for hitting him and stuff, and he's gonna be rich. So that's good to hear news. But anyway, during the CPAC speech that Trump gave, which went, I don't know, close to 2 hours, somewhere in there, that general area. But it was one of his longest speeches he's ever given, I imagine. But anyway, he said that he's going to make another emergency declaration, whatever you want to call it, but he's going to make it he's going to make sure that freedom of expression is carried out, and that the conservative values and conservative views are allowed on college campuses and in other places. He's going to sign that in. It's an executive order. Yeah, that's the right word, executive order. Not a national emergency, but an executive order, which I feel like it's probably pretty necessary. It seems like we've got a lot of socialist agenda going now, and they're not even in, a lot of them's not even in office, but they're influencing those in office. And it's good to see that Trump recognizes this, and he recognizes that it's a threat to the freedom, especially our Bill of Rights and individual rights as citizens of the United States. I mean, when you start censoring people, you're going right into communism and socialism and other stuff. I mean, you got a right to believe and say what you want, so long as it's responsible, and even if you don't agree with some stuff and you're against some stuff, you can still voice your opinion, whether other people like it or not. It's not for us to like or dislike. I mean, you have a right to say certain things, and it's just the way it is, because we live in the United States. That's why we had a revolution. That's why we got away from England, Great Britain, or whatever you want to call it over there. We got away from that, and we formed our own nation. We formed a constitutional republic, and it's not a democracy like everybody thinks it is. No, it's a constitutional republic. Anyway, let's move on, because this all ties into what I'm talking about. A lot of fake news and stories going on. CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, PBS, and probably a lot more are guilty of fake news, and they make false statements, and they make and some of the statements that they do make that are probably true in a sense are made out of context because they don't give you the full story. They either twist and turn it or only give you part of the story, leave something out. They don't tell you the full truth. And that's what I'm talking about tonight. I'm even going to take you over here to my other page so I can get into the heart of the matter. Okay, I found this one article here, and it was put out. I thought it was pretty good. It's called "The Importance of Fact-Checking Content in a World of Fake News." And it was written by Samantha Lyle. And this is visme.co/blog. Check fact checking for content marketers. Even though it's in the business world, it has a lot to do. I mean, life's basically a business with a lot of people, and facts are important. And what are some of actually this is factchecking.org. And what's wrong with fact checking? And it says here you must look beyond narratives of facts and fake news and political and social moments. Why should you fact check? I got 3 or 4 points that this article mainly puts out, and I'll go through this. I basically paraphrased this a little bit and got the meat of it, so I'm going to give you the 4 points. Everyday conversation requires you to accept rather than reject. You go along, you read something, and you're pretty much, if you like it or don't like it, your mind teaches you to accept it or reject it without actually checking it out, because our minds are lazy and they don't have a habit of checking things out. So a lot of times we believe or disbelieve something because we don't check it out. So we need to check it. It says here that your brain is lazy and you tend to accept things as true or untrue without checking or verifying them. And that's point 2. Now point 3. Mere repetition of a claim that you make. You think something's true or not true simply because you're not used to checking it out to see if it's true or not true. So it basically says you need to check it out to make sure. You need to verify it, make sure it's valid. In the case, you need validity. You need something that proves it. Point 4, you may, if you don't check it out and you just accept it or not accept it, you may be biased if it fits your worldview. Fact-checking content in a world where news... Okay, basically you may be biased one way or another based upon how you see the world, your worldview. So you may be biased without even knowing it. You actually need to check the content out to see if it is true or untrue, and to see if maybe you may see something new. You need to be open-minded, and you need to see if it's true or not true, and something you may have thought before may actually not be true. You may find out something new that disproves how you felt or saw something. So you need to be open-minded about it. Anyway, I wanted to go on to the main point of this. I thought this was really a pretty good article, and it has a survey down here. It has survey questions, and I thought that I'd go through these real fast with you. There's several of them. It says, how often do you fact check your own content? And it gives you a little chart here, and that's not a very good deal on it, but it gives you a little chart here. 69% say they always do, 24% say they usually do, and 6% say they sometimes do, with 1% rarely and 1% never. Okay, then another question it gave was, how often do you fact check other writers' work before sharing it? It says always. 40% of you say always, or those polled anyway. And usually 33%, sometimes 21%, rarely 5%, and never 2%. Okay, here's the next question. How often do you check other writers' content before publishing it? So if you're a writer, you might want to think about this. 53% say always, 31% say usually, 12% say sometimes, rarely 3%, and never 2%. All right. When citing a source, do you always fact check the source? And this is something that I've had to learn to do because I've wrote a lot of papers for school, and I'm talking about graduate school, where you had to be able to know how to cite sources, check the source to see if it's valid, check the source to see if the person that wrote it has good credentials. And it says here that 64% say they yes, no says 8%, and sometimes says 29%. And here's another survey question. It says, what tools do you use most commonly to verify the facts? Some 85% said they use Google. 29% said the scholarly articles. 40% say books. 34% say interviews. Other search engines was 31%, and other was 7%. And another question here, and I don't mean to get repetitious here, but these are the questions, and they're really great questions you need to ask yourself when you, especially when you're promoting something, or especially doing vlogs like I do, or giving speeches in front of people, where especially scholarly people and educated people who they're either going to respect you or they're not, based upon the kind of information you give them. If you give them bad information, they're going to check you out to see if you're credible, or if you got integrity in what you're saying. If you mess up, then you're going to have to correct yourself. There's been a lot of news people on this very point mess up. And it says, have you always fact-checked your content, or do you begin after a recent publicity of fake news? Always 78%, recently 18%, 4% says I don't fact check, others 1%. Let's see, here's another good question that I found, and I really like this one. Have you ever been notified your content included factual errors? 46% says yes, and 55% says no. I've made errors doing blogs online that I realized during the blog that I messed up, and I had to go back and correct myself. And I even had a friend on here who does it for a church, and he kind of said something that wasn't true the other day, and I don't mean to call him out, and I won't mention his name, but he knows who he is. But I'm not getting on him because I know I've done the same thing. But he said a guy that I listened to, Ben Shapiro, was a liberal, when in fact Ben Shapiro is a conservative libertarian, just as he is. The very guy that said that is a libertarian, and he should have known that Ben Shapiro is not a liberal. No way. Ben Shapiro speaks against liberals all the time. Ben Shapiro has his own shows on through the week. He has his own radio shows, and he works for he's the originator and editor and stuff for Livewire, and he does the Ben Shapiro show, and he does the weekend specials on Saturday, and you can see it on Sunday too on the internet and probably other places. But anyway, I just wanted to point that out because we need to get our facts right, no matter who we are. We all can make mistakes, and we need to, if we do make those mistakes, we need to somehow correct them. And I believe that was all that I had on that list. But let me see. I'll get back to me for a second. Again, the lighting in here is not great, but it's workable and I can live with it. And I got another article, if I can find it on here. Yeah, here it is. This one comes from factchecking.org. Let me get this article. And it had some more information. And it's called Fact Checking. Let me get it over here where you can see it. It's called Fact Checking is an independent fact-checking organization. This comes from factchecking.org/blog. What is fact-checking and why is it important? Well, there's a number of reasons that fact-checking is important. And this article is really great, and it points out the major reasons why fact-checking is important. Let's see who wrote this article. Well, it just says it's by fact-checking, by fact check, and it was written on 16 November 2018. And it gives the major reasons why fact-checking is important, because of misinformation and fake news, of course. It says here that misinformation can destroy reputations and credibility of writers and subjects. Point 2 is invalid content can smear an adversary and have catastrophic results. And point 3, readers and audiences have to become more skeptical about what they hear and read. And this is really important in scholarly writing, and especially reporting, writing books, writing articles, because if you misinform the public or misinform them through books, broadcast, vlogs like I'm doing, or, don't take this wrong, some people, but there's preachers and everybody else, preachers, ministers from all walks of life, that actually don't give factual information, or they don't check their source out, or they misquote or say the wrong names or misinterpret something. But it happens to a lot of really famous people, especially. There's books that's written that doesn't have the correct information in them. Believe me, I know. I've had to search through scholarly books, and I came up with some really creditable writers that were famous, and they were scholars, and they were known for their field, but yet they got their information wrong. And it was my job to go back and correct that and look at other articles to prove that right or wrong. And it's the same way in broadcasting, it's the same way in writing. So you really need to check out to see if what you're talking about or writing about or thinking about, you need to find out if it's valid or not. So to the friend of mine who did that the other day, I know you didn't do it on purpose, because I know you pretty well, but you need to really make sure what you're speaking or talking about is valid. Everybody makes mistakes. I've made mistakes on here simply by misquoting, getting a little bit ahead of myself when I talk. Sometimes I talk too fast. Actually, I don't talk that fast. You want to hear somebody talk fast, listen to Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro, again, is not a liberal, as you said. He is a conservative, and he is a libertarian, the same as you are. So you need to think about that, big guy. I know you would correct me on this if I were doing something for you, so I'm going to tell you so you can, because I know you're in front of a lot of people, and you know people all over the world, and you speak and they listen to you from all over the world. You need to think about what you're saying. I know you didn't do it on purpose, but Ben Shapiro is no liberal. He would probably laugh at you and scoff at you if you even called him that to his face. He might do something else, because I know Ben Shapiro. Well, I know from listening to him, and what I'm saying is I know how he thinks about certain issues and things, because I listen to his commentary and stuff all the time. I listen to him a little bit here and there every day, or at least every week. But anyway, when you do research or when you speak on things, make sure it's valid. Make sure your source is credible, and the people writing your source is credible, and check the information out to make sure that, again, that it is valid and reliable. And if you go to school, you'll learn that, because professors will stamp on you like a bug, just squash you like a bug. I know. They're very judgmental towards stuff like that, and they expect you to get valid and reliable information. They don't want they want to make sure you fact check it and get it correct. If you don't, then you're going to flunk. They're going to throw it and laugh in your face, and you're either going to be, let me get back over here to me. You're going to feel, let me get my hand over here. You're going to feel down here. But if you get it correct and reliable and valid, you're going to be up here. You're going to be at a higher level. You're going to be respected. But if you don't, you're going to be down here. So you need to get your stuff right and correct. And I'm not telling you, because again, I make mistakes. But if I were going to school or taking a class, or if I were somebody important out in the public, I would make sure that the information that I have is valid and correct, so that the people wouldn't be misinformed. Because if you misinform them, you're guilty of the very thing you're misinforming them about. you'll be known as a crackpot. You'll be known as somebody kind of like a quack, and I know you don't want to be a quack. You want to be professional, and a professional checks their things out and makes sure that they're valid and correct. So I just thought I would bring that up. Now, Trump even mentioned this the other night, and he mentioned Mark Levine. Mark Levine has a show on Sunday nights, but he also has a talk show on the radio that's on about every day, and I also listen to him from time to time. Not every day, but 2 or 3 nights a week, I'll find myself listening to him here or there, either in my car or over the radio when I go over my little, what do you call it? My Alexa thing that I do. I have a little Alexa, little round box like thing that I listen to my radio, where I can pick up broadcasts at night from other stations from all over the U.S. mainly, but I listen to a lot of conservative talk shows from different stations throughout the United States, and it's really neat that way. I really like it, but that's how I get all my information. Anyway, Mark Levine, Trump mentioned him the other night during that CPAC speech, and Trump mentioned that he had to say things correctly, or Mark Levine might correct him, because Mark Levine's really very scholarly, very intelligent, and checks things out to make sure everything's correct. So if you don't want to maybe not a put down, but if you don't want to be corrected by somebody, then make sure that your information that you put out is not fake news like CNN or MSNBC, but make sure that the information is correct. And again, I'm not saying it because I'm trying to be somebody that's going out and trying to, you need to do this, you need to do that, but I'm just telling you, if you want to be professional like you say you are, then you have to think your information needs to be valid. You don't want to misinform people. You don't want them to think wrongly of you, because if you do, you're guilty of being a quack. And I don't mean to call you quack, but I know you're professional. I know you know what you do well, but you need to check out your information, especially when it doesn't even have to do with what you're mainly talking about anyway. And especially if somebody's the same political leanings you are, then you shouldn't be calling them liberals if they believe like you do. I mean, if they're liberal, then you are too. Are you a liberal? No. I know that you're more a Republican and conservative. Well, so is Ben Shapiro. And Ben Shapiro is very talented and very famous, and he's still young. As a matter of fact, I'd like to make more commentary on Ben Shapiro. Now, Trump is the man as far as I'm concerned, and he's one of the 3 best presidents during my lifetime. And I don't think there's anybody else going to be around with him. May not be another person around like him during my lifetime, which I don't know how long that'll be, but during my lifetime, there's nobody that makes sense and does things for the people in a common sense, for the common good of the people, for the best for the nation. I don't know of anybody else like that. Everybody else is going nuts. So even some of the Republicans are fake Republicans, fake conservatives, are wacko nowadays. But there's another guy that I've been thinking about, and he's young, vibrant, very enthusiastic. He's got a lot of energy. He talks fast, and that's Ben Shapiro. He talks fast simply because he thinks fast. And if I wanted another president, of course this guy's a little young now, but you want somebody with youth in the White House, then you got to go with Ben Shapiro. He's about the smartest, most intelligent of all the commentators that I've listened to. Nobody can out-debate him. If he were to get into, if he were to run for president and go into debate with the other politicians and people that get up there, all the professionals, supposedly professional, he would take them to their knees. He would be up here and they would be down here. That's just the way it is. And I've been watching him for a while now, and I've really got to know and like him. And I need to read some books by this guy because I really think that he's the next big thing, and I just hope that he someday runs for big time office, because the government needs talent like him. And all we got right now is a hopeful in Donald Trump. He's more or less the savior of America, whether you want to be in denial or not. He's saving this country one day at a time, one dim Democrat at a time, taking them down. And Ben Shapiro is another guy that can do this. Now, what's the difference in these two guys? Donald Trump, kind of soft-spoken, but he does it in a manner, and he lets the media kill themselves. You know what I'm saying? He lets the media choke on the very words they say. He controls the media. He can take any situation, any event, turn it, and force it down the media's throat, or even the Democrats, and make them choke on it. He just has a way about doing it. He's probably the most successful and most talented and most intelligent at doing that than anybody. I'm not saying he's overly, well, I can't say he's dumb. The guy does, he's not. He beats out people all the time. He takes on everybody. He don't just take on anybody. He picks on everybody. Maybe it's he's so confident because of all his power, and he knows it, and he knows that he can control pretty much everything. But, he does it all for a purpose. This is his cause in life. I really believe it. I believe he's rich and he could do probably anything he ever wanted to do in life. I think he's come to a point that this is his final stage, and he wants to do something great, and he'll go down in history. He's got a legacy. He could do fine not even being president and still have a great legacy, because of all the big business and all the money he's made and famous throughout the world. But no, he's going down, and he'll probably go down as one of the greatest presidents of all time. I never knew these other presidents, just what I read about them. I've known about Kennedy and Reagan, and I've known about Trump now. And to me, they're the top three again during my lifetime. I know what I read about FDR and all the great things he did, and all the things I've seen, documentaries and read, and historical programs and articles, books, and all this and that. And I know all the great things he did, and I know all the great things George Washington did. Lincoln and others. But no, I don't think anybody's had to do as much or take on as much as Trump has. I don't know of anybody that has as many enemies as he does, and he still comes out on top. Comes out smelling like a rose every time. And that's why I like Ben Shapiro. I think he's in the same mold. And I don't think he's... I think he's more... I actually think Ben Shapiro's more intelligent than Trump. But Trump's got the edge because he's got the power and control over the media. But I feel like that Ben Shapiro could be the same way. I just feel like Ben Shapiro needs more time, seasoning, and he needs more experience. And, well, he probably could do with making some money too. Becoming bigger, if you know what I mean. Becoming more of a worldwide figure. And give him 10, 15 years, and he could probably do that. But I'd like to see Ben Shapiro run as president. He's similar to Trump in a lot of ways, and he agrees with some things Trump says, but when it was time for election during 2016, he was more for Cruz. But again, Trump and Ben Shapiro are similar. So if I were going to vote for another president, it would have to be somebody like Trump. And this Ben Shapiro is the closest thing I've seen. And he could be like Trump one day if he keeps it on. Keep it on, as they might say. But anyway, let's do one more thing and then get off here. Because I've been on here for a little bit. But let's check out Trump's tweets. Give me a second and I'll look it up over here. I'll switch us over to scene 2. And I'll look up my Twitter real fast. Twitter account. And see what's going on with Trump today. Let's see here. Let me get on here. Let's see. Go to my conservative thought page. Here's my list, my conservative thought. See if I can find a tweet by Trump. I might just look it up. Trump might not be tweeting anything today. Tell you what, let me just look him up real fast. I don't see anything here. I'll just search it. Just a second. I'll search for it. I think we got it right here. I post these sometimes too at night on my Facebook account. But here's a tweet that Trump put out, or here's a tweet that Trump retweeted, put out by the White House. It says, President Trump's message to those afflicted by tornadoes in the Gulf Coast states. We're grieved by your side, and we pledge our unwavering support to help you rebuild from the very depths of this horrible tragedy. And here's the original tweet from Donald Trump, put out 5 hours ago. It says, there's no collusion. It's talking about Mueller, of course. Mueller's supposed to or they said that he might put out some information on that this week to whether the investigation against Trump is going to stop or if it's going to last longer. Trump says there's no collusion. All of these investigations are in search of a crime. Democrats have no evidence to impeach President Trump. Ridiculous. Here's another one 5 hours ago. Now that the Democrats are going to try and switch from collusion to some other reason, it makes them continue to look like sore losers who didn't accept the will of the people in the last election. They will do anything to get rid of the president. And at Ari Fleischer, it will never work. Here's another tweet put out 5 hours ago. 5 hours ago, it says, the military drills, or war games as I call them, were never even discussed in my MTG Kim Jong-un of NK fake news. I made that decision long ago because it cost the U.S. far too much money to have those games, especially since we are not reimbursed for the tremendous cost. And here's another one put out by FEMA, or put out by Trump, that is. FEMA has been told directly by me to give the A-plus treatment to the great state of Alabama and the wonderful people who have been so devastated by the tornadoes. Governor Kay Ivey, one of the best in our country, has been so informed. She is working closely with FEMA and me. It's talking about the tornadoes that hit Alabama and parts of, I believe, Georgia and South Carolina. If I'm right about that, I believe that's right. It's what I believe I remember hearing on the news this morning. And I didn't have to work today, by the way. It snowed here. We weren't even expecting that because it was supposed to stop yesterday, but woke up this morning, there's snow on the ground, but it didn't last long. It melted off by noon. So I even went and worked out, got my workout in for the day. Anyway, that's about all we need to see on there. Gave you the major events. Major events, what I wanted to talk about. And let's get back over here to me off this. So this is Fraley's World Insight Vlogs. Here with the People's Populist Revolution. March 4th, 2019 on a Monday. I wanted to do this yesterday, but I didn't get around to it. But anyway, I gave you the major events of things that I've been thinking about lately. Not so much the border wall lately. I haven't been talking much about that because I covered that pretty in detail the last 3 or 4 blogs. And I thought I'd give you a change to something else. Plus, the news hasn't mentioned it as much as it had been, but I'm sure that will come back into news trending, if you know what I mean, as we get away from the CPAC conference. The summit, I didn't talk much about the summit, but Trump had a summit in Vietnam this past week, and he more or less walked away from it. There's still some disagreements on about how many how much of the denuclearization that Kim Jong Un in North Korea want to do. They're going to have to think about their position, and they're going to have to renegotiate it, I figure. And Trump's not going to take partial denuclearization. He wants the full deal, and he'll keep sanctions on North Korea just as long as he has to. He might even have to make them harsher and harder. And Kim Jong Un, his people will starve to death. Of course, he don't give a crap anyway. He's the dictator. He don't care. He's killed thousands of his own people, probably hundreds of thousands of his own people. If they even look at him cross-eyed, he don't care. He don't care if they starve anyway, as long as he stays in power. Him and his military and his main people stay in power. But I really think that North Korea has a lot of mineral resources and assets that the United States could use. I hate to talk like an imperialist, but hey, North Korea's caused us a lot of grief over the years because of communism, caused their own people a lot of grief too, killing them and starving them to death. And things could be so much better if he would just denuclearize and let Trump help his economy. I mean, Trump could put a lot of business over there and boost that economy, and it could be look what Vietnam did after the Vietnam War. Gradually built itself up and made itself a very good economic system, just like South Korea did. South Korea and parts of what's those Malaysian countries down there, a lot of, well, even Japan, and some of those Malaysian countries have made themselves pretty powerful as far as economics goes. And so is China. China's built their economic system up a lot better than it used to be, but it couldn't survive without us. and plus Trump's negotiating with China too, and he's put a lot of what do you call it, taxation, or what's the word for it to use internationally. The word escapes me. I can't think of the word. It's kind of like taxation. The tariffs. Okay, they put I believe it was 25% tariffs on them. Of course, Trump's thinking about that hard now. He's thinking about reducing it because China's gradually starting to work with us more, so he's keeping it. So Trump's kind of keeping some of it down on some things because he wants a trade deal with China badly. He just wants fairness for our country. He wants us. China's been cheating us for a number of years. They've been charging us high tariffs, and we've been charging them low tariffs. So now Trump would threaten to kind of even it up because we were actually losing money and they were gaining money. They were making money off us and charging us more than what we were charging them. So why not just kind of even it up? Either that or we're going to charge them a lot more. Anyway, I could probably read up more on that. I kind of like to study the economics of not so much of the country, but trade and stuff like that. I've always been kind of interested in because it goes right along with geography, international. I guess what you could call international relations. I like the economics of international relations. I probably could have done pretty good in international relations if I'd have took it in college. But I had geography and so many political science classes, and I had a little bit of economics, but I studied economic history mainly. I didn't have economics per se, but I had economic history I studied the different kinds of economies that the different countries had throughout history, and that was mainly European, but I had a lot of American and a lot of American history and European history, but I studied European history really good. I wished I would have been more in depth in the Middle East, but I'm pretty well the world history kind of guy. I studied a lot about Russia, but not so much about the Middle East that much. I mean, I have had course history of it and even Africa, but not in depth like I did Europe. I mean, everything to me was Europe and America, and that's where my strengths lie. I'm a little rusty now because I've been out of college for years, but I still have books on it, and if I need to find something or be reminded about something, I can turn to my books, or especially now with the invent of the internet and the historical knowledge that's all over the place on the internet, I can look it up and find it if I'm rusty on something or don't foggy in my memory a little bit. Of course, over time that happens when you get older, and especially if you've been away from certain things for a while. But anyway, this is Fraley's World Insight Vlogs, and I'm going to sign off for tonight.